welcome to Bleach Revisited. I am Karker Gold, your host of this series in which we will be reading every single chapter of the Bleach manga, providing critical analysis of the art and narrative, as well as personal response to each of these chapters. We'll also be discussing how the individual chapter connects to the rest of the manga as a whole. As usual, we begin these videos with a reading of the chapter that we are currently discussing for the episode. This is Chapter 129, Suspicion of Assassination. Eat this. The fact that you passed out from hunger means you must have it too. Spirit energy. You too. Yeah, me too. I'm Gen Ichimaru. Nice to meet you. Gen. That's a strange name. Are you awake, Matsumoto? Captain, what are you doing in my room? Idiot! This is the office, not your room. If you're awake, then take over for me. It's your own fault for taking on the Fifth Company's work. Be quiet. Take this and go to your desk. Is this all that's left? But there were stacks. Just shut up and do it. I must have slept a long time. Forget it. It must have been hard, seeing your classmate Gen and Hinamori like that. Classmate? Huh. Oh. Captain, do you really think that Captain Ichimaru did it? Begging your pardon! I'm Kokichiro Takizoe, 10th Company, 7th Seat. Are Captain Itsugaya and Assistant Captain Matsumoto here? What is it? Come in! Sir! Excuse me! I'm sorry to interrupt, sir, but we received an urgent report from the guards in prison. Assistant Captains Aburai, Hinamori, and Kira are missing from their cells! This is Bleach, Chapter 129, Suspicion of Assassination. And this is Momo Hinamori. So he's holding his stance even after his sword is broken. That's 51. Next! Never take your eyes off the enemy. That's 52. Jeez, I almost had him. At the moment of contact, he deflected the attack by matching the speed of his sword with his opponent's. Then he instantly went on the offensive. He's come a long way. Before, he was relying on Zengetsu strength, but now he's learning at a frightening pace and a frightening level. Urahara, it's just as you said. He truly is. I have absolutely no excuse. When Assistant Captain Hinamori called me, I turned around, and everything went white. When I woke up, it's simply inexcusable. She must have used Hakufuku, white concealment. Sir! Hinamori's a master of Kido. We should have sealed her powers if we were serious about locking her up. But the reason we didn't was Kido is Soul Reaper powers. Because no one thought she would go this far. It's not like she was going to be executed, so why? There's only one reason. Matsumoto, go back without me. I'm going to rescue Hinamori. I couldn't believe my eyes when I read the letter. For a time, I didn't believe it. But it's true, isn't it, Captain Eisen? He was the one who killed you. August 11th, Sunny. Their friendship and love of soccer got to me, so I decided to help them. We started practicing at their secret base, the local park. My talents as a striker quickly bloomed, but I had no idea of the tragedy that awaited me. That is it for Bleach Chapter 129, Suspicion of Assassination. An easy title for me to remember. You know, I don't arbitrarily. It's just, stuck out to me. Let's talk about the chapter. Let's talk about the art, the narrative. Let's talk about how we feel about it. We open up with this flashback sequence. And Matsumoto, I think, is still recognizable. She's the only character that kind of has some of her distinct features, such as, like, I think she retains a little bit of the waviness of her hair, as well as the mole next to her fuller lips, and of course, a bit of her bustiness here. So she's being offered this kind of, like, is it dried persimmon? Like, what is this? Some sort of fruit, some sort of food, I guess. Might be a vegetable, I don't know. Anyway, she's been offered something to eat, and we get this figure of a younger Ichimaru again. And certainly this is a younger Matsumoto that's kind of passed out on the ground here. Neither of which are wearing Shinigami robes, so this is assumably before they've earned their Shihakusho as Shinigami. But he's offering her something to eat, and he expresses this idea, right? The fact that you passed out from hunger must mean that you have spirit energy. And so I talked about this before a little bit, that, like, the idea is that, you only really are hungry if you have spiritual energy to replenish with food, right? Because food, I guess, carries and helps replenish your spiritual energy within the spiritual realm. So, that's something that we could have assumed before. That's why characters like maybe Renji or Rukia actually went hungry whenever they were young, even though this is supposed to be a place without hunger and death. But it seems as though if you have spiritual energy and it gets used up, you will grow hungry, and you will eventually pass out. And you might even be subject to the same effects of, extreme hunger and malnutrition that you might in the real world. We get to see a younger again, and he's got several of these little plants, all bundled up. I kind of like this outfit that he has. It reminds me of, like, a chain kind of running down his shoulder. Makes me think of, like, maybe the soul chain, but could be reading more into that than not. Nevertheless, I do like that, you get Gin with, like, kind of a helpful and carefree expression, and Matsumoto, clearly, she's seen better days. And the kind of takeaway from this is we get this connection between Ichimaru Gin and Matsumoto Rangiku from a pretty young age, right? That both of them were young, that something transpired, and Rangiku needed assistance, and Gin was the one to provide it, and they maybe have a connection. She also speaks towards Gin having a bit of a strange name. As for the title for this chapter, Suspicion of Assassination, obviously, Aizen's been assassinated. There's a lot of people who suspect other people. There's just a lot of suspicion in general in this chapter. Of course, we open with Gin because he is one of our number one suspects for that, right? To further drive home kind of that connection between, yes, that was a younger Matsumoto and an older one, we cut to her as she currently is. She wakes up. We can kind of derive that from the title, opening up to her just like kind of being arranged this way with her eyes open. But then the next panel helps really sell that as she wakes up and sits up from a couch, and over here, Toshiro is giving her a bit of a hard time. Oh hey, are you awake? I like how she asks what he's doing in her room, and it's like it's the office. But he's been working through this paperwork, and I do like that. Like we get this little bit of comedic moment between the two of them. It's kind of a cute interaction actually, as Matsumoto kind of gives him a hard time because he is the captain of the fifth. He shouldn't have to do all of the company's paperwork, but he takes it kind of onto himself. He hands over what he's got left for her to take care of, but it's barely anything. And the implication here is that he let Matsumoto sleep for longer than maybe he should have, and took the responsibility of going through the paperwork on his own, right? She notices that and mentions it, and to which we get this kind of close up of Toshiro. He tries to be cool and play it off, and say like, "Hey, don't worry about it. Must have been really hard to see two of your friends kind of like at odds with each other, right? That Hinamori was trying to kill Gin, and certainly Hitsugaya recognizes that, or if you remember, Hitsugaya recognized that Gin was ready to kill Hinamori as well. So, yeah, of course, she has this moment where she's like, classmate? Huh, oh yeah. That's not really what her mind was, right? Because it's clear that she has this connection with Gin that goes beyond just being classmates, right? They didn't just enter the academy at the same time. Clearly, they had a connection beyond that Toshiro isn't aware of, right? And here she even slips, like she's like, "Do you really think that Gin?" And then she has to correct herself, as Captain Ichimaru. So she really does know Gin as Gin. She's known him for a while before he's been the captain, and she's had this connection before they became Shinigami. That's really what the beginning of this chapter kind of helps to establish for us. I really do love this top panel and like her kind of looking out these windows and feeling a bit isolated in this moment, even though she's still in the same room with Toshiro. It does a good job of like reminding of the absence of these other connections she has, especially of Gin. Right? You get the sense that like they're have a bond that's kind of strained now, and that's what kind of gets iterated here as we have Toshiro and Matsumoto kind of facing different directions. Right? Toshiro is pretty sure that Gin is guilty of things, whereas Matsumoto has this hesitance, and that's why she brings this up. I really love the way that both of their hair depicted here, kind of just like the long strands Matsumoto has being kind of tugged down in these different ways, as well as the kind of slicked back, kind of poofs of hair that Toshiro has. It's pretty cool. I like both of their designs a good bit. Of course, before they can really get into this conversation, they get interrupted by Kojichiro Takizoe, who is high enough of a seat in the 10th company that he's just like our boy Hanataro. 7th seat, right? But yes, this nothing Shinigami shows up to give this report that, of course, our vice captains, Renji, Momo, and Izuru, Abarai, Hinamori, Kira, however you'd like to call them, they have all escaped from their cells one way or another. We get Momo as our title character here. I think we're looking a little bit more carefree than we usually see here. We're going to see Momo in a lot of distress and duress throughout the series. That's how she's kind of constantly getting caught up in things. As we know, she's a very emotional kind of character and wears her emotions very openly. So it's likely that you might find her in a very, pleasant state. Were these not times of murder and assassination and potentially even war, right? Of course, all you need is just this little bit to know that we're back with Ichigo and Zangetsu, as the design of those blades is very clear. I like that, we get, this is kind of, because we could have just hopped back into this page, but I do love the idea of, like, we get this sword hitting the ground, and we see that it's been broken, we get this splatter of blood, and then Ichigo's, like, grinding back against the ground, like, way closer to the foreground than maybe we even expect. I like this idea that this battle's kind of all happening, and we have the focus point or the focal points on this blade that sort of zooms out, and then we cut back to Ichigo with the other half of that blade, presumably. He's been injured, but he's still fighting. And Ichiru is, of course, not Ichiru. What am I saying? Boy, Yorichi. Getting my Y names mixed up. Yorichi is overlooking this. I do like this again. Great depictions of Ichigo. Really like effective and strong kind of depictions of him. Um, and I think that's the whole point, right? That he's holding his stance even after his sword's broken. This is a stance that we've seen Ichigo take before, so it's cool that like Kubo's kind of mindful of that and mindful of like the way in which he's drawing Ichigo. I love this, Zengetsu, old man Zengetsu at the bottom of the page here, noting that yes, this is 51 swords that we've gone through, and Ichigo's already tossing the other one and grabbing a new one to continue the fight, right? So I do like that, like back and forth. It also establishes this sort of timeline for us, right? Now that we're 51 swords in. Of course, new swords for both Ichigo and Old Man Zangetsu as he's fighting with like, this one that's got this hook near the end of it. Yeah, and like there's this kind of back and forth. Ichigo ducks under. I like this like surprise sort of expression from Old Man Zangetsu as Ichigo, tries to take advantage of this opening that he's kind of gotten. Presses for it. I really like the action lines for this. I think it's effective. I think it's clean. Zangetsu then jumping to avoid being hit. Again, cool stuff. Like Ichigo looks up, Old Man Zangetsu throws his blade down and crash through the false blade that Ichigo has. And then, interestingly enough, I really like that. Like they're having this sword fight. He throws the sword down, and then Ichigo he looks up and he's already getting bapped. And he just gets swatted back into a mountain. To which, I like again the idea that Ichigo is focused too much on the blade of his sword rather than his enemy, Old Man Zangetsu here, who's expressing like, "Hey, yeah, don't take your eyes off the enemy." Of course, he's like, "Oh well, I almost had him." Which, if you remember, the whole point of this exercise isn't to just beat Zangetsu into submission; it's to find his true sword, right? That's the only one that can defeat him. So, Ichigo's kind of growing to be more capable with any weapon, which is nice. And I mean, that's kind of our reflection here, right? That Yorichi is really realizing, like, oh man, he's really growing really quickly. He's developing very quickly. He's truly, and then it cuts off. So, assumably, yes, it's Urahara has passed along that yes, Ichigo is this great potential. Etc., etc. If there's anything more to him, we have yet to discover, but he is the protagonist, so of course he is important. That moment of being truly one thing or another, immediately cutting to the danger of that crescent moon hanging up on high. This idea of it being outside of these bars, right? So we get the idea that maybe Momo would have been safe in this prison were she not to escape, but now she's gone out to where that moon is. Closer to this like symbol of danger. We get this fellow trying to excuse himself, and we also I really like this kind of back and forth where Hitsugai expresses that like yeah, well Momo's master Kido, so we probably should have locked her up. We just didn't expect that she would go this far, and we see just exactly what Momo is capable of with her Kido, right? But I do love that like we have this big reveal of the escape hole, right? And good framing of our characters around it too, with the shorter Toshiro forward, Matsumoto behind, and this guy that's sort of bowing and trying to apologize on the left. It does a good job of framing this image, the striking kind of hole that's here in the page, even. Another pretty good array of panels from right to left as we get Matsumoto on Toshiro's side, like literally like aligned if you were looking at it right to left. And so, yeah, like, well, if she's not going to be executed, why would she, break out like this? And Toshiro is kind of taking it upon himself to go and save her, right? Because he's pretty sure that he's almost, you can come to the conclusion that he's pretty sure that she's trying to go and take revenge for Aizen. And so he has to go rescue her, right? Because, you know, whew, she's not going to do very well against anyone else, but maybe with the keto she has, maybe she can. Nevertheless, if you read kind of into this, I love Toshiro's expression here. You really get his sense of seriousness in this moment. But and of course his hair is looking really anime. But it doesn't take much to connect the dots, right? Toshiro suspects Gin of being the one that killed Aizen, and so certainly if Momo is going to go and confront Gin, then well, we've got a problem, right? Where she's not going to be able to defeat Captain Gin. She's not a captain; she's a lieutenant. She's not on that level. And so Gin, with his Bankai, certainly would have been able to defeat her. But maybe another captain, like Hitsugaya, could face off against Gin. And so we're getting our first little seeds of perhaps a conflict that has been hinted at for a while before, whenever Hitsugaya got involved in the conflict between Momo and Izuru, who were both their vice captains, right? Well, Momo being Aizen's vice captain, but his friend. I guess both their friends or have some connection to both of them, right? And so therefore we got a little bit more conflict between Toshiro and Gin, right? Of accusations kind of made against Gin, and Gin being like, "Oh well, ain't me. I don't know what you're talking about." I like that we hit this step and then we get the figure of Momo rushing as she clutches this letter that she has. I mean, she put it in her Shiakusho in the other chapter, but now she's got the letter in hand. Um, and she's saying that she couldn't believe it whenever she read the letter, but she's come to the conclusion that it's true. Again, we get a reminder of that moon, of that ever looming danger, and she refers to very vaguely, he was the one who killed you, right? So we've got confirmation that Aizen has written that Aizen suspected that the person to kill him would be a man. So again, more kind of falling to maybe suspect again. Though the fact that it is kept nebulous, like both with Toshiro and here, keeps us unsure if this is all heading towards Gin. We can assume it is, but without actually knowing who was written about in the letter and knowing where these characters are headed, it's not 100% clear. Right? The letter could have said someone other than Gin, and that's being held from us. And could be a dramatic reveal later. So, yeah, I don't like that it's not super specific. I wish that we would have gotten the letter reveal here at the end of the chapter rather than it kind of being left ambiguous. I think the idea is that we're supposed to come to the conclusion that Toshiro does, really, right? That Toshiro is supposed to be concluding, okay, well, Momo must be trying to go get revenge against Gin. I need to go and stop and save her. But, you know, I think if that was going to be the case, it should have just been made explicit, you know? I get like why it's kind of kept more ambiguous because it allows for maybe a bigger dramatic reveal if they're different characters, in the letter versus what's assumed down the line. Like it kind of is holding off a little bit of the surprise for us. But again, I feel like it could have just been said here and been used for its dramatic effect here just as well as it would later. But we'll get into that as we get into the further chapters that do eventually reveal who was Letter. We're following up with the little Cone story, and we're getting him kicking the hell out of a tree, breaking it in half, and all these kids being, in awe. But there's a tragedy that awaits, so even our Cone story has a great tragedy looming. Again, very determined expression here on Hinamori. I think it works very well. Yeah, it's all good stuff. Also like this Ichigo from behind, like very triumphantly just pulling another sword out of the rubble. Good. It's all good. All in all, yeah, it's a neat chapter. Again, more of a transitory chapter. We've been having a couple of those recently. And whenever I say transitory, it's really getting us from a really big focal point to another one. It does establish a few new things for us, right? So, I mean, we already knew that Momo left her prison, but now we're learning the extra details that she is this keto master, and that she is capable of this destruction, and that she's going for revenge, which are, we could have figured the revenge stuff at the very least and the escape stuff, but the keto master stuff is new for us. Certainly this connection between Gin and Matsumoto might have only been most vaguely hinted at before, but now we have it made pretty explicit that there is a connection there between those characters, which, helps to further muddy the waters between, who's doing what for what reasons. Um, yeah, and so we have a bunch of suspicions abound. Like, I do like the new things this chapter kind of introduces. It also speaks towards, Yurichi realizing just how unique of a potential Ichigo is, especially at how quickly he's developing this technique. So yeah, a bunch of stuff here, but again, like, really what's at the heart of this chapter is, moving from point A to point B. It's Ichigo still training, but there isn't like a really big, it's sort of intercut. Like, we're not getting a huge focus on the battle there with Old Man Zangetsu. And then elsewise, we're kind of moving from A to B, right? We're moving to a state where Ichigo will either gain his Bankai or not gain it all within these 3 days. We're moving to a point of confrontation with Momo and whoever she's looking for, as well as Hitsugaya going to go and save her. So this is all just putting things further in motion for us, which I do appreciate. It's taking its time to kind of build that instead of just jumping straight to what it wants to do. And sometimes, as an author, it can be difficult because you do want to just get to those moments of like focus, right? It's like, okay, well, yeah, I do want to just get to the moment where Ichigo gets his Bankai, if it's going to happen, or confronts the next foe, or get to the moment where, Momo and Hitsugaya and whoever it is all meet up. But taking the effort to, like, kind of bring us there to show us the interim, it's important. It helps build that sort of anticipation. And it makes those moments a little bit more worthwhile in the long run. Well, that's about it for the chapter. I like this chapter. I think it's a solid chapter. Let me know what your thoughts are. As always, we're going to be talking about spoilers, how this chapter connects to the rest of the manga as a whole. So, if you have not read the whole Bleach manga, there be spoilers here. Anyway, of course, this is I'm pretty sure dried persimmons are Gin's favorite food, something like that. Anyway, this is the moment, of course, that Gin and Matsumoto meet. This is shortly after she's been abused by Aizen's men and had a bit of her soul taken, and there's some pretty rapey undertones. Yeah, so, like, Gin finally is using this moment to kind of go and talk to this person and to help her out. I like that, like, suspicion of assassination is this chapter. Of course, for those in the know, we know that this is the point. Like, this connection between Gin and Matsumoto is why Gin wants to kill Aizen, right? However, Gin hasn't killed Aizen in the current plot yet, right? He hasn't even attempted to do so, and so all these suspicions for assassination. It's interesting that they fall elsewhere and that the truth is elsewhere, even though this is a nod towards what would eventually come to happen, right? Yeah, Tsurushiro trying to put in the work, trying to kind of, you know, do everything himself. Certainly, a character trait will get there, especially him having like this weird sort of, I don't know, relationship towards work and maturity. That's a whole thing. Let's see, what else? I don't think there's much I want to talk about here with Ichigo and Zangetsu. Uh, I think the big thing, of course, is what we get to here, right? Where she's talking about how, like, he's come a really long way, especially whenever he's not relying on old man Zangetsu's strength. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. And that whenever growing on his own, he has like this, frightening pace and frightening level. Whether or not that's like influence of the Hogekyo or not, it's arguable. But I think the idea that Urahara has kind of cued Yurishi in on the fact that he is like this fourth dimensional transcendent being, maybe. Um, yeah, that's certainly mentioned there. Of course, we throttle ever closer towards Hueco Mundo times and the threat of Aizen, and that moon kind of being emblematic of that sort of hollow threat is neat. The mention of Hinamori being a master of Kido's kind of hilarious. I don't know that I would call her a master. At the very least, she doesn't seem to show her mastery. I think she's very good at Kido, but whenever you start to consider like Kido masters that really flex their mastery, uh, you know, like Aizen, right? Some black coffins and everything like that. We don't. It would be wild to see Momo, if she's really a master of Kido, like bust out some of those master level Kido, right? But I don't think we ever see any of that from her. We don't get a lot of great Kido displays from Momo, and even here, I think this might be the biggest that we do see for some time. So, bit of a weird thing. Maybe it's something that was pulled back a little bit on. Maybe she's still capable of all that, but her own immaturity and inability to kind of rationalize and fight rationally perhaps plays into the fact that she doesn't use these Kidos as efficiently as she could. Of course, we talked a little bit about this. Pretty sure the letter, speaks towards Hitsugaya being the killer, right? So this is the night that like all that funk from the letter is meant to kind of cause a bit of chaos. Maybe allow Gin to murder some people. Who knows? We'll see. We'll see. Nevertheless, that is it for this one. I don't have really any other connections to later bits there, but we see Momo being completely manipulated by Aizen. But even furthermore, like, I think the idea is that Gin was supposed to draw suspicion, from somebody, if not Toshiro, then somebody that like he was supposed to kind of cause a bit of a ruckus and cause there to be a little bit of attention put on him as a red herring. And a distraction, right? And Toshiro's falling for that. So we're seeing Aizen's manipulations here and there, but also we're getting a little bit of manipulations of Yuhabak. So, manipulations abound, really. And perhaps even manipulations of Urahara if you think about him as cultivating Ichigo towards certain ends that he wants to see through. So, yeah, everybody's getting manipulated this chapter. It's great times. Anyway, that's it for this one. Again, like I said, not a ton to talk about for connections and spoilers. If you see some other connections that you want to talk about, some of the sword shape stuff maybe, do let me know in the comments. Just tag it as a spoiler. But otherwise, that is it for this episode. Hope you enjoyed it. Feel free to give the video a like if you got this far. I do like seeing that from folks. Just to let me know, like, hey, you made it to the end. Hopefully you like it. As always, another way that you can support the channel is via our Patreon. You can find the link in the description for any of these videos. And as always, if you do support, your name will appear in the credits here. And you'll get a thank you from me, which, speaking of, thank you for supporting. I do appreciate it. That's it for this one, folks. I have been Karkur Gold, your host of this series, in which we're reading all of Bleach. As always, reminding you that spirits are forever with you. Stay gold.